morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jackson Stava, the athletic director here at Seattle Pacific. I'm so excited to kick off our series on Conversations with a Falcon as we dive deeper into much of the hurt and the needs that this world has. And so incredibly grateful to have Cedric Davis with us to start this conversation today. I'll let Cedric introduce himself in a minute, but Cedric is the chair of our board of trustees here at Seattle Pacific University. So he's the ultimate boss currently. That is, I think, his role. But Cedric, would you introduce yourself? Give us a short kind of background on yourself and what you do professionally, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Certainly. Thank you for this opportunity, Jackson. It's always a gift and a pleasure to be able to engage with my with members of the SPU team and of the SPU community. So again, Cedric Davis. I am an alumni of the School of Business, Government, and Economics. I graduated in 2008 with my MBA, and so it's a gift to be here. On a day-to-day basis, I am a senior advisor at the Seattle Foundation. The Seattle Foundation is Seattle's community foundation, and so our work is to support and ignite and advance philanthropic efforts of those who entrust their resources with us.
Great, thank you. So in terms of timing, we are recording this on Friday, January the 8th. And so there have been a number of events in our country over the past couple of days that have brought up feelings that many of us had a number of times over this past year, over past years, and for many decades and centuries. And so, you know, Cedric, I guess a great place to start would be, as we look to engage a conversation around the idea of equity and justice and inclusion, and do so from a perspective that is distinctly Christian here at Seattle Pacific, how might you give a snapshot of where we are? You know, if you were to tell our students what you think they need to know about the injustice and the systems that are in place currently that are making things a significant challenge for folks, you know, how might you set the stage for a student right now?
Well, it's a great question, Jackson. I think the recent events so often don't happen out of thin air. I don't believe that these incidents that we've seen across the country were as spontaneous as we've been led to believe. And so I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the folks who were insurrected against. I will use that word. I'm concerned about the lives of those and their families that were lost during those events. But if I'm going to be honest also, I'm concerned about the folks that are going to go back to their homes, into their neighborhoods, into their communities, and go about their day-to-day lives. These folks are part of our communities. These are our neighbors. And God is very clear in his command that we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And I don't think that the events that happened over this past week showed much love. But I have to be honest, I don't get to be the referee or the arbiter of whether or not you feel love from me. So we too have to consider and pray for the hearts and the minds and the spirits of those that went to DC, and that created and caused the chaos that we saw on the screen. And you know, for some that were there in the audience, we have to pray for all of us. And when they return to our communities, I think in many ways we can't condone that behavior, just like, you know, whenever there is unrest or chaos in any community, regardless of who does it, we can't condone it, but we do need to listen. And I think in many ways, their concerns, whether they're real or not, need to be affirmed. But they also need to be countered. And that will give us a great opportunity to transform the conversation.
Yeah. No, I appreciate what you said about, affirmation of thoughts and feelings and confirmation. It makes me think, I was just pulling up here on my phone. We just had an article with one of our student athletes published on our website, and a question was posed to him, and it was, it asked about what has it been like since March, dealing with all that has come, all of our ways. And the student made a very interesting point, and I would love, based on what you just said, to maybe hear your response. And I recognize this is the million-dollar question. But the student said, with all that is going on in the world, the biggest challenge for me has been wanting so badly to help, but not knowing how. We do have a number of our students that I think, and staff and faculty, I know I've felt that way. And you probably have as well a number of times, about just, we want so badly to help. So if you were to address, maybe more, this certainly globally, but also knowing our students and knowing our student athletes, and having been a student athlete yourself and understanding the all that comes with that, how might you answer that student's question? We want to do something, but we don't know how, we don't know what. What are some real tangible ways to start some of those conversations?
Well, quite honestly, I think the best way is to ask. Just because you don't see someone hurting doesn't mean that they're not hurting. But when you do see someone hurting, and whether they're asking for help or not, you can ask them, how can you help? And then you have to listen, and you have to trust that they are being honest and integrous with you. And once you listen, then you have to respond. And I would just encourage anyone to respond in kind with what is asked and what aligns with your values. If you cannot do it, don't say you can do it. Say, I can't do it, but I want to sincerely help. And so I'm willing to help you get the help you need. And then go as far as you're able to do that. So ask, listen, respond, and follow through.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, that's really helpful, because I've thought often, and even of myself, and I know that in my role as a leader, I've really tried to lean into the conversation and to hear our student athletes and ask their questions and hear their responses, because I recognize more and more every day that my existence as a white, upper-class, middle-aged man is very, very different from what many of our students are experiencing in a variety of reasons. And I know that at times, there's almost a fear, I think, for some of our students who maybe have a similar background to me, whether that's socioeconomically or based on the color of our skin, to say, well, what is our role in this? How do we engage in a conversation? How do we not offend others? And so I appreciate what you said about, just asking and knowing that if you're going to ask, you better be okay with what the response is. But, is there anything else that, any other tips that you maybe could give in that spectrum of, for those that might feel uncomfortable or concerned about offending someone by asking to engage in the conversation, what might be some other tips that you would give to our students?
There is the matter of when someone asks for help, we have a number of tools, whatever level of success that we have achieved in our lives. We've used and leveraged a number of tools and resources and networks and things to get there, right? But when we went and asked for help, and we received that insight or that advising or that mentorship, we listened and we believed them, right? And that helped usually it helps to aid our success. Well, I think in this instance, when we ask and when we listen, and then when we have to believe that this person who is experiencing this, whatever the issue is, that they are actually being honest. And, as you move along, as you go along, you'll be able to determine whether or not they're being straight with you, right? You can do that, but it happens in relationship. Just like Jesus, right? He went and said, I'll make a fisher of men, right? I'll make you a fisher of men. And that person, whichever of the disciples it was, all of them, they believed him. And then he showed them, he was able to show them. But you have to believe people. And when they tell you that I need your help and this is how, you have to believe them, and then work to be their partner in that work, right? It becomes transformational in those instances, and not merely transactional, to where you give someone something and expect it to have some miraculous effect or impact on them, and you can just walk away knowing that you did someone some good. It doesn't quite work that way. You actually have to trust and walk with folks in order to see that type of transformation. There's an African proverb that I like to use. It says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, take somebody with you. And, I use that. I share that with folks, and I try to walk that out.
No, that's good. That's yeah, I've heard that quote before. I think it's actually up in our men's soccer coach's office. I think he's got that one up. But no, that's really true. That really is. So, in these conversations, it's been interesting as we have prepared for, trying to roll this series out and looking at what these conversations would be. It's kind of a natural a tendency, I think, for all of us to look backwards, right? And want to replay everything that's happened over the past week, month, year, decade, century, et cetera, and point to the moments that, have been the moments that were maybe the beginning of some of the injustices or the systemic challenges that we face in our country. But what I'm really beginning to yearn for is that forward-facing view on things, where we can start saying, hey, if we're going to be hopeful, and hope is a word that I've been clinging to in my faith through this year more than ever before, what should we be hoping for? So I guess the question I would have for you, Cedric, is you think about I'll just say our student athletes. Obviously, any of our students would fall in this category, but I work so closely with our student athletes. As you think about those couple hundred young women and young men, and you think about all that we've been talking about, what do you hope that they look like as graduates from this place at SPU? What do you hope some of the things that they walk out of here with look like practically as they engage these challenges and these issues in our world?
I too like to be able to look and move forward. But I think that the journey that we need to constantly take ourselves on is actually looking back and reflecting. I think I would love for our students to be reflective on not just what they got out of SPU, but what they left at SPU, right? That which is bound on earth is bound in heaven, right? So I want them to look at those things and what was bound up in them and what they left themselves. But I want people to go back and search and uncover all of the things that have fed into their lives. Because I think it's that looking back and understanding those things, which is what gives us that vision going forward. I think it solidifies the direction that God has us on, the path he has us on, if we look back and we honor those things that have fed into us. And they're getting a wonderful education. They're getting an incredible education. I know that for myself. And they're coming in contact with folks that have impacted their lives in every stage, whether it's their resident assistant, whether it's the food service person. I want them to look back at those experiences fondly, right? Because that's what's going to carry them forward, right? You can think about it in all kinds of different ways. The people we've lost in our lives, we have to look back and reflect on those experiences and those relationships and the knowledge and wisdom that people have imparted in us in order to help us move forward, right? And those things will energize us. I think they'll give us fuel. I think they will give us that the spirit of love and joy and all the fruits of the Spirit. I think it's important. It's terribly important for us to look back, reflect on where we've been, so that we can know where we're going, and make those small shifts as they may, in order to call on those things that God would have us to do.
No, that's great. So, I'm curious, in the time that we have left, if, I know that for me, looking back, a lot of that has been just education, right? As someone who, is a white male, and it's been education on things. And so I've been trying to read and, watch things and engage in different educational opportunities. Do you have a handful of suggestions for our students on books or movies or series or, things like that you think would be some, that have impacted you personally, or you think would be impactful for them as we all as a group try to engage in the way Christ would call us to?
Sure. Top of mind, I'd say, get deep in and look to your scripture. My personal practice is to read a proverb a day. I think a proverb a day will keep the evil one at bay. But as far as kind of other written materials, I have several. I've been listening to and have mostly gone through a title called Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. Fantastic, phenomenal piece of work. I think that there are other books that have informed me, like Worse Than Slavery. It's a dense piece of writing, but it's really informative on the transition from slavery to the police codes to our current day system. But what I would encourage folks is, if there is an issue that they are passionate about, learn about it. Get into the history of it. Go backwards into how it was started and how it has manifested itself over the years. Come to understand those things, and then seek righteousness and justice as you look to be the hands and feet of God in moving that work forward, and solving those issues, instead of just trying to understand it.
Thanks. Well, the first time I think I heard you speak publicly, and we'll end with this question, you quoted Sean Carter, who is
the
illustrious poet, and I think I own every album he's ever had, and my wife's tired of me listening to it on vinyl in our house. But a lot of those famous rappers, there's always a mic drop moment at the end, right? If I was to ask you, hey, what would you want to leave our students with? If there was one line or a couple lines you'd want our students to know, and obviously you don't have to quote a rapper or quote a musician here, but this can be a Cedric Davis original. What would you want to leave our students with?
Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. I might have gotten that a little mixed up, but it's on the fly. So,
no, that's great.
Micah 6 and 8.
Yeah. It's on the standard outside of the sub right here on campus. So,
right.
Well, Cedric, I appreciate it. We'll close with that. Thank you for your time today and being willing to speak into what is a challenging but a necessary conversation. And we're glad that we're able to be part of that here in SPU Athletics. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you.